Hello viewers, and welcome to another edition of the Joshua Generation program, brought to you by the Advent Cable Network Nigeria. My name is Oluwa Damilola Ilifeju, your host, and with me today in the studio is Mrs. Michelle Dajou. You're welcome, Ma.
Thank you.
Our topic for today's discussion is celebrating creativity. As we all know, creativity is a phenomenon whereby something new and valuable is formed. Ma, creativity is a buzzword now in our society where some people call themselves creatives and influencers. So in your opinion, Ma, what would you say creativity is all about?
Okay, I want to see creativity coming from its root word, which means to create. Create is the root word of creativity. And to create simply means to produce something new or involving a kind of modification to what already exists. For creativity to come in, I want to see it in different words that we can use interchangeably for people who are creative. We can call them the talented, the gifted, the innovative. Wow. All these are words that we could coin in, to describe a creative person. And creativity has to do with the power of imagination. Before creativity can be said to be so, it has to be conceived in the mind first before it comes out to real life.
Absolutely.
And also, it has to do with some form of originality. That the person creating has to own it in a unique way that is peculiar to him or her. So that is what we can see as, creativity.
So creativity, how can one be creative? Is creativity something that can be nurtured, maintained? Is there an ideal environment for creativity to, be established?
To blossom, okay. There's a lot of arguments concerning whether creativity is inborn or you can train to be creative.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to delve into those aspects. Okay. But I think since you're asking how one can be creative, I think you're already tilting towards the aspect that someone can be trained.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Now, creativity, there's that aspect that comes naturally. For every human being created of God, you have some certain amount of creativity. There's no person out there who doesn't have any form of creativity.
Wow.
Because we are made in the image of God. And God himself is the ultimate creator. And he is the master of all creativity.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Because we are made in his image, we should have some form of creativity. Now back to the other aspect, if it can be nurtured. Yes. There are some who, have a level of creativity that is higher than others. That we cannot deny. We can see them around in the society.
Are those people we call geniuses?
Well, yes, that's why I started with the word gifted, the talented, or geniuses. Those are words, that we can use to describe those people that have a higher edge or an edge over others when it comes to creativity. They have a high tendency, to use their imagination and bring it to life. So there are people like that. Now, your question, let me hit it well now. You said, how can one be creative? Now, when you look at the aspect of one being creative, if you don't try your hands on something, you wouldn't know if you can be creative or not. So one way I can suggest for one to know if he or she is creative is to try your hands on something.
Oh.
And then another aspect is that, you know, creativity comes when the mind is really settled. So there's an inspiration that usually comes for creativity to come into place.
Okay, so are you trying to say that without that inspiration, creativity cannot happen?
Well, you will need space, you know, since I said it has to do with imagination.
Yes, yes, you said so.
For imagination to take place, you know, you need a clear course without distractions. So that, you know, those thoughts, you can really fashion them into what you need a picture in your mind.
Absolutely.
So you need that, you know, clear-mindedness, clear-headedness to be able to concentrate and bring up a picture in your mind that can be brought to life. Another way, it's also to learn from those who are creative, the talented.
Okay.
If you identify someone whom you think is talented or you know is talented, you can enroll and learn. That's some form of education.
Okay, so that when you said like enroll and learn from someone who's creative, it reminds me of apprenticeship. Is that what?
Well, that's a form of education for creative minds. You see the hairdressers going to learn skills.
Yes.
You see the carpenters, they all learn skills. So those are aspects of creativity that, you know, someone can actually train in order to become. And then also brainstorming. If you're used to doing things in a particular way, you should be able to, you know, look for different approaches, alternatives to do something different and then expect a different result.
Thank you very much for that contribution. So what are the benefits of being creative? What are the benefits of creativity?
Creativity is beneficial even to the person who is creative because it builds you as an individual.
Yes.
To live, you know, to the maximum, your maximum capacity as an individual. So that is the first benefit that I can pin down. And then the second one is to the society, where the person comes from, because creativity builds the society. So when someone is creative, you know, he gives back to the society that made him or her.
Thank you very much for that contribution, because that was, you were leading up to what my next question would have been, which is the relationship that creativity has with the society.
With the society.
How does that creative, how does creativity in a person, you know, affect the society? And are there positive ways, are there negative ways that one's creativity can influence the society, or the society, you know, influence a person's creativity?
Okay. Maybe before I get to that question, you know, you were talking about the importance of creativity.
Yes.
I want to just chip in something there before I answer the next question, which has to do with the uniqueness of creativity to individuals. You know, I discovered that in our times, there's a lot of parental influence, even in the profession that children choose.
That's absolutely true.
You know, it's good to guide, especially when you have discovered your child's creativity, or you see a creativity in someone. You can encourage that person to toe that path.
Yes.
But you know, imposing your own beliefs or desires on children, I don't think it is right, because those children are not meant to be our replicas.
Well, that's very common in our
It's
African
very
society.
common. That's why I just thought to, you know, mention it before I go
Thank you for
straight
that
to
very good point.
Thank you. And the next question that talks about the relationship between creativity and the society. There is a relationship, because creativity doesn't exist in isolation. People who are, it's individuals who are considered to be creative.
That is true.
And those people do not live alone. They live in a society. And so when you look at it, I want to look at it in a point of the individual's creativity is a collective, you know, creativity of the society. That's if you have so many, let me just explain that a bit.
Okay.
When you have a society that has so many people that are considered talented, you know, when you have many of them, that society can be considered a creative society.
You made a very important point before you went into the topic of, you know, the creativity and society and how that relationship, you know, affects. And that point was about parents, you know,
Yes,
influencing their
yes.
children's
Yeah.
creativity. You know, it's quite common as a parent maybe to observe certain traits that a child exhibits and, you know, told them in a certain path. But we also have parents who impose their will
Yeah.
on their children. And of course, being the family being the basic unit of the society. So how can parents, you know, help their children, you know, to express this creativity in the right way, or express that individuality, because you made a very important point, which was the uniqueness of
Yes.
creativity.
Yeah.
So how can parents, you know, prevent themselves from getting into that state of mind where they're imposing their will, but actually nurturing, you know, that creative genius that the children already
Okay,
have?
I think it has to be a deliberate decision on the part of a parent to discover that when you impose something on a child, you're actually destroying the inborn and natural, you know, creativity
So
that
that
the
means
child
parents should
possesses.
be very intentional.
They should be deliberate. And it's good for them to, you know, observe and encourage in the path that the child is already having interest to guide, which is very okay. But, you know, the negative side is that imposition. You must be a medical doctor. You must be a lawyer. Every home wants to have a medical doctor. Well, we can't all be medical doctors out there. So.
Absolutely. But then I was also thinking in my head where we have some children who are strong-willed, and most of them are the ones, you know, that, you know, despite the influences around them,
They still
go
push
ahead
through.
and, you know,
Yes.
But then we have shy kids, shy children who, because of the imposition, you know, they just go ahead with it. So for those shy children, how do you, you know, encourage without being too overbearing or without...
You know, unfortunately, there are stories I know of like that. And in the long run, you see that they don't really put their minds to what they are forced to do, because that's not where their desires are, and that's not how they are wired. But because that's what they are insisted on to do, they have to do it, because parental influence on a child, we can't underestimate it. I have heard of a situation where a father told his son that if he doesn't read this particular course, he's not ready to pay the school fee.
Wow.
So, you know, that's a very difficult situation to put a child.
Difficult. I can only
And
imagine.
yes, that's why I said the parent, everything or a lot of it lies with the parent to deliberately make up their mind to allow these children and give them the support they need in order to become who they really should be in life.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that contribution. We'll just take one more question and then we'll go on a break. And the question is, how can the church, you know, encourage creativity in a child? Because, you know, the church also has a very huge part to play in the child's development and growth, just both spiritually and, you know, in otherwise. So how can the church positively, you know, influence a youth and the child's development in that creative aspect?
Okay. I will talk about the church, and I will also touch a bit on the society as well. The church actually recognizes the place of giftings, even beyond the physical. You know, in Christendom, we know that as a child of God, or when you get born again, there are spiritual gifts. So even beyond the physical gifts or talents or creativity that we can see in an individual, we also recognize the place that there is the spiritual aspect. Of course, when you look through the Bible in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and from verse 4 to 11, that's one passage that talks about the giftings of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So you find churches that encourage through teaching and all that for individuals to identify their areas and then even fit into their place in the church. And then I also want to talk about the society as well. I said I wanted to touch a bit on the society. The society also has a lot to contribute to the individual. You know, I talked about the aspect of an individual affecting the society by giving into it, but also the society has a role to play in an individual's life, because a society has norms, it has values, it has morals that it passes to a society, to its citizens rather, through education. Now, education is also a subsystem of the society.
Absolutely.
Now, whatever it is the society wants to train their youth to become, they inculcate it into the education. Now, there's a problem with that because sometimes education concentrates only on one aspect of it, which is usually the cognitive. That's intellectual.
Yes.
But in totality of education should be, you know, the complete person. Education should be the totality of a person, putting it into consideration.
You're quite right about that.
Yes. And those are aspects in education, you know, that should be considered. The affective that talks about behavioral patterns, it looks for changes, you know, in an individual. When someone comes from a crude background, it's expected that when you go through education, it should refine you. You shouldn't be behaving like someone who is not educated.
Of course.
And then you come to the cognitive, which is what I was mentioning.
Yes.
That has to do with the intellectual knowledge, head knowledge. Can you write exam? Can you pass? And then we also have the psychomotor, which has to do with skills. You know, being able to put that knowledge you have acquired into production. There's no point training a doctor who is very intelligent, knows how to write his WAEC, get into medical school, pass his exam, and then maybe when he comes to the operation table, he cannot use the psychomotor skills. Yes, because the psychomotor is the domain of the creative. And I feel we neglect that part a lot in the society. That's why I felt it's also important to mention the part of the society. That's how it can also affect aside the church.
All right. Thank you so much, Ma. So now we're going on a break, and when we come back, we'll still be talking with our guest, Mrs. Michelle Daju. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm by name Friday Chibike Ogu. I'm from Enugu State. I'm 26 years old now. Now I'm level 1 at the Institute of Management and Technology, IMT, Enugu. So I got admission last year into the institution. I have passion for building and construction. So to practicalize the inspirations that comes to me day after day, I decided to be compacting carton paper together to make a house. So this is one of my products. So everything you are seeing here now is just carton. Both the roof, the parapet, the column, everything here I build it with carton. So then the little knowledge I have in electrical and the electronics, I wired the building. So both inside and outside of it, because I did both the inside and outside of it. For instance, now the windows are openable. You can open the windows like this. So this other thing here is what I built with the knowledge I have in electrical and the electronics. So I installed this power bank where you can use to charge your phone, your Bluetooth, and anything chargeable, rechargeable. So this thing again, this key here is for the light. That is this red key here. If you press it, the whole light will start to shine. As you can see now, it's working. So there is other thing here that I constructed. The screen here, I bought phone screen and some of the phone parts with memory card. Then I bought a rewinding wire, that wire they use for fan coil. So I run it through down this place. So, and let me on it so that you see that it's working. So this key here now, it will be functioning. So this is it. Once it's playing the music, the same music it plays shows on the screen. So okay, I can also draw a building plan.
Welcome back. I'm still in the studio with our guest, Mrs. Michelle Dajo, and we're still talking about celebrating creativity. You're welcome back, Ma.
Thank you.
So, Ma, what would you say is your view concerning the video that we just watched?
To say I'm impressed is an understatement. I mean, look at the young man. He produced a beautiful model of a house. Out of the materials he mentioned, he said carton.
Just carton.
He mentioned the electronic memory card and the phone screen and also power bank. And he said you can use it to charge. You know, mention these aspects or these materials in the hands of Friday Chibike. You have a house model. Give it to Michelle, you have nothing. That's where creativity comes in. And it's good for someone to know exactly which aspects, you know, you have interest in and you're good at and develop it. What I want to point out also is that he learned some of these things in an institution because he said he schooled in an institute of technology.
Yes, he is. And he's currently in 200 level at the moment.
Yes, and that's just 200 level. I'm really impressed. I wish we could have more and more of young people like that doing exploits for us. And I'm sure Nigeria will be far better.
He's such an impressive young man.
Yes.
So how would you say the church comes in here? How can the church help, you know, to encourage young creative people like Friday Chibuike?
The church can come in by, I know that there's usually so much burden on the church. But when you identify spectacular, you know, talents like this, you can encourage them. Because, you know, a lot of times we leave so much for the government. Let the government. Who is the government? We have to start. The church can start by setting the pace. There's nothing wrong with encouraging someone like this to develop his gifts and also, you know, give back eventually to the society. So there are different empowerments. I know that the church does some empowerments for youths, but especially when it discovers, you know, special ones, special gifted people, they can encourage them by even sponsoring them or setting them up or having a partnership with them. I think those are ways they can encourage people like that.
Thank you very much, Mal. You made a very important point, which is you need to discover your gift. So apart from, you know, trying your hands on new things that you've not done before, what other ways can youth, you know, find what they're good at, you know those things that they are good at, especially if it wasn't something that, you know, they've discovered early on in their childhood? Or
no matter how old someone is, I don't think it's too late. Okay. So even in adulthood, there are people who discover things about themselves. Now, talking about discovery, you know, as humans, whenever you introspect, there are deep desires of the heart that you wish you could do.
Yes, that's
and I think that's true for a lot of people. If you have interest in such things, I think it will be worth the while to try your hands on it and see if that may be a path for you to follow.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Thank you so much for making this episode a very, very interesting one. God bless you, Ma.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure being here.
So do you have any advice to give our youths, you know, that are watching right now? What do you tell them, you know, concerning, you know, developing their creativity? What
you know, for the youths, somehow I want to say I envy the youths now because so much attention, the spotlight is on creativity right now. And now is the time to really, you know, show what you can do.
Yes.
Because a lot of organizations out there are in search of these special gifted people. And they are looking for them, you know, to collaborate with them. There's a young man that I met recently. He has created, or should I say, he has produced 2 different machines for me.
Wow.
The first one, I tried him out of curiosity. He created a dryer for...
Like a hair dryer?
No, not hair dryer, for kitchen use.
Okay.
You can use it to dry your food. Maybe process it by drying.
Oh, like an air fryer?
Yes, something like that. And I was so impressed. When I needed something, I just called on him and I asked, can you fabricate this machine for me? He said, just tell me what you want and it's as good as done.
Wow.
He did. We just over the weekend, that was when he brought it to me.
Wow.
So there are wonderfully talented people out there. And I believe that if we identify people like that, he even shared with me that he is about opening his own company because people identified him and chose to work with him. And they're sponsoring him. So that's why I said I envy. Well, in the positive way, not in the negative. Because there's so much that, you know, you can do out there. And there are people looking, scouting out such people in order to develop them further and also invest in their lives.
Okay, I just have one more question, you know, to ask, and it's just about, you know, other people. You know, you said it's about discovering those young people, those really gifted, those geniuses that, you know, blow our minds when we find them. But there's this common, you know, idea that people in the rural areas that are not easily discovered, you know, maybe just a little. Is there more we can be doing to, you know, find those people, to identify those people?
It won't be out of place to say definitely there are such people in rural areas. But the unfortunate thing is that they may not have access to where they can get the help they need. But I think when we relate it to the church, there are times churches go on outreaches even to rural areas.
Exactly
Yes. So they do discover, and you know, there are times you find intelligent children. They pick them up and train them in school. Or if it's to train them in a trade or in a skill. I know that there are few instances that happened like that. So they may have a little disadvantage not knowing where to go. But I believe that, you know, deliberate efforts can be made in order to discover them. Because creative people don't only live in cities.
That is true. That is very true. Thank you so much, Ma. We're really, really grateful. It was really nice to have you with us here in the studio. God bless you.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Dear viewers, I hope you had a great time watching this episode of the Joshua Generation program. Please do not forget to follow us on all our social media platforms now shown on your screen. And most importantly, stay tuned to the station, the Advent Cable Network Nigeria, reaching the world with the undiluted word of God. See you in the next episode. I am Oluwadamilola Ilefeju. Remain blessed.